Good afternoon. My name is Susan Doyle and I will be your facilitator today on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 36th webinar, the topic of which is Lean Approach to BIM Implementation by Roig, Segura, CEO of BIMETRIC. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will ask Victor in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The speaker for today is Roig Segura from BIMETRIC. In 2012, Victor founded BIMETRIC Lab, a consultancy firm which aims to become a catalyst for the transformation of the construction sector, built on the introduction of the lean construction and BIM principles. Currently, he's an advisor to organizations both public and private. As a member of the steering committee of Lean Construction Barcelona by ITEC, he has participated in events like LIPS 2015, 16, 17 and 18. Since March 2015, Victor is a member of the Commission Building the Future initiative launched by ITEC with the aim to introduce lean thinking principles, BIM methodology and collaborative contracts on the construction industry. Since December 2015, Victor is a professor of the Department of Architectural Technology at Barcelona School of Building Construction. Since September 2016, Victor is a member of the steering committee for the LIPS conference. Spanish and Catalan editor of the BIM dictionary, he is a core member of BIM Initiative, a not-for-profit effort based on the BIM excellence approach and the unique research-based approach to digital innovation in the construction industry. Previously, from 1987 to 2011, at GPO Ingeria SA, an engineering and architecture consultancy firm, Victor worked as an engineer, project manager on large investment works, and general manager of the building division. He became associated in 1996. I will now pass you over to Victor to start his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for the presentation and for giving me the opportunity to talk with Lean Construction Ireland community about our work that we are trying to, the way that we are trying to introduce BIM in the construction sector, mainly in Catalonia and also in some other companies, organizations in Spain. I will talk about the main topics will be just a slide about lean principles, because everybody that is involved in this community needs to know these principles. Then I will talk about 5 minutes about the BIM methodology and this approach that I am participating now in, that it's based on research that you will see the structure of this BIM framework, that it's the base of our method. Okay. Then also I will explain the method, how we are trying to implement BIM. And then some conclusions about this method and what we need to take care of. The lean principles, as everybody knows, lean come from the manufacturing sector and Toyota production systems, but the most important principles are defining value, mapping the value stream, creating flow, using open system, and pursuing perfection. Trying to apply these five principles to the construction sector. Glenn Ballard found the Lean Construction Institute in the ends of the last century. But some I will talk just I will make an introduction about the BIM methodology that we are using as a reference. You know, before of thinking on BIM implementation, you have to establish a reference framework and shared in understanding about what's the meaning of BIM information modeling, because many people just see the 3D part of the BIM, just the 3D representation, just visualizations, and just also all the issues related with geometry. But for us, building information modeling is a set of technologies, processes, and policies enabling the, as you can see this in the definition of the BIM dictionary. BIM dictionary is a part of this framework that you will see during all the presentation, that it's BIM initiative, based on the research of Professor Dr. Bilal Sukar. Okay, but the most important thing for me about building information modeling is that it's people-centered. We know that it's based on objects. We know that we have to establish policies that will affect our processes, and we have to change our technologies in order to manage the information. But who must understand these changes? People, because it's not just a technological change. It's much more a social change, a relationship between all the stakeholders of the construction sector. That means a mindset change, that it's the hardest part of this new approach. Okay. Then the other thing is that usually we understand the BIM models as graphic information with some non-graphic information related with the objects that that this model contains. But for us also, the documents related with the objects that are structured in the same base of information are part of this model. Okay, this information, the non-graphic information and the documents, can be managed through external database, but also can be part of the BIM model. That is it's constituted by all these parts. The most important thing is that we have to understand that the model is not just a 3D model. It's a database that has some uses, that we can use these models in order to achieve different functions: visualization, quantification, operation management, facility management, and all. Okay, and these uses are utilities that we apply to over this database. But in the BIM initiative approach, we understand that models can be classified in three main groups. General model uses, that depends on the facility that you will develop. That can be, it's different that if you will prepare or if you your business it's focused on buildings, that it's focused on infrastructures, you know. But the general model uses refer to this choice. You have to choose the type of infrastructure or the type of asset that you will manage. Once you have to decide this, the model uses of the domain are common for all of these general uses, you know, and also they are common for any phase of the life cycles, and the life cycle of the asset, you know. Then finally, you can define customized uses for specific functions that you want to provide with based on the model. Okay, then the most for me uses are just the way that we manage the information that we have introduced in the models. Another thing that we have to understand when we talk about BIM is that the relationship between the stakeholders change. Sorry. Now we are working based on documents, and when we prepare documents, we don't need to work together in the same stage of knowledge. Everyone can work at their own path and introducing the information in the way that they want. If we work with BIM, we need more coordination, and even more when you achieve a level of maturity in BIM information management, you will need to work collaboratively. But it's much more that that's much more than work coordinated. If we work collaboratively, we need to establish the goals before beginning our work. And if we make if we work in a coordination framework, we just need to establish some specific times to share our information and look for a solution that match with the things that we are doing until this moment, you know. Then if we work in a coordination manner, we will achieve the best solution that we can provide, but it's not the best solution for the project. In order to get this best solution for the project, we need to work collaboratively, okay? But BIMs need, we can work in BIM without collaboration, but the results increase if we collaborate, okay? The next point is that I will explain the method based on this approach, okay? And why we say that it's a lean approach? Because we try to use the kata process. We have seen what we want to achieve, that it's work in a collaborative way, sharing information and establishing a shared structure information that allows us to get all the accurate information in order to take the decisions during all the life cycle of our projects or of our assets management, okay? But as you know, the kata process, it's based on that once you have a direction or a challenge to accomplish, you need to study, or you need to understand which are your current conditions. And this is that we try to analyze through BIM maturity models. The most known in UK is the Baywatch model, that it's based on milestones, and the model defines some conditions that you have to accomplish in order to change from one level to another one. The BIM initiative approach is based on a curve graph that you see in this picture, that it's established. We define 3 stages. The first stage is modeling, the second stage is collaboration, and the third stage is integration. And then in each stage you have some specific steps to do in order to get more maturity that will allow you to jump from one stage to another. It's not just a milestone, it's much more a process of maturity, you know. We will see it in next slides. Okay. Then in order to implement BIM, you have to begin knowing how to work with BIM, with models based in objects. And when you achieve maturity enough on this, then you can begin to think on collaborations. And after this, you will, when the technology is enough developed, you could jump to the third stage, that is integration. The method then that we propose, it's based on this SCADA process, and we have to work on which are our current conditions. And for this, we need to know really well which is our role in the construction market, because it is really different if we are direct stakeholders or if we are indirect stakeholders. If we are direct stakeholders, we have to establish a BIM implementation based on the production, in the production phase. And if we are indirect stakeholders, we have to face the challenge to introduce BIM or information requirements in our employment information requirements, for example. And also adapt our information structure, our information processes management, the process of management information, like, for example, licensing or similar things, approval process, or similar process that the indirect stakeholders do during the life cycle of the assets, you know. Then the second thing that we have to face, or we have to understand, is what is our pitch. And then we are focused on the project lifecycle management. We are providers of projects. We are constructors, but our business is focused on producing assets, or our business is managing these assets, because it's quite different if you are in the production system or are you in the management system. See that when we are working on the project life cycle, we just think about the production of this asset, and we don't think about the operation and the maintenance of this. That has been passing all the time that we have been in my experience as a project management in GPO, as Susan explained you. I never thought about the management and operation systems, and still now few projects are facing the challenge to define from the beginning of the project which will be the management strategy of this asset, or to consider the management strategy of the organization that will receive this, or will that we will deliver to this organization the result of our actions, you know. Then that's really important, because until now I think that all the information that we can find in many forums and blogs and also in a lot of guides and manuals are focused just in the life cycle delivery. Few of them are making an approach, a broader approach to life cycle asset life cycle, sorry. And I think that must change in the next years, because the importance of the project life cycle is that we will spend just 2-3 years on this phase, and that means an asset life cycle means at least 30-40 years. Then science, until we don't transfer the information requirements in an accurate way to the project life cycle, we will have problems in the transfer and in the information transfer from the construction phase, more clearly in the as-built models to the operation models, you know. Then also another question that we have to arise when we try to define which will be our BIM implementation approach, it's how we manage our organizations, and at which level do you want to introduce the BIM methodology. If it's part of your strategy, of your organizational strategy, are you looking to introduce BIM in your business as an opportunity because you want to face the new markets, or you want to provide new services? Or maybe you can just face the BIM implementation with a view of focus on projects. Then you will define your BIM implementation based on business cases and just for specific projects. But also you can go until your production line and work on the implementation through the different processes that you use to manage the projects or to produce the projects or to support the process. Then this is a strategic decision that you have to take at the beginning. And then here arises one of the biggest problems that we find in the application of our method, that is a lot of organizations are working, but they don't know exactly how they work. They don't have a clear organization of the 3 levels of the organization management. Some of them try to define some strategies, but they don't define clearly, just work based on opportunities or based on relations with clients, but they don't have an organizational strategy. Then we cannot establish a BIM strategy that it's necessary in order to manage the implementation process, you know. Even more, it's quite often that a lot of people don't have a well-defined process system, and they work just in based on ad hoc system. every project is a new experience for them. Okay. Why it's so necessary to know which is the level that you want to implement BIM is because we understand that if you want to implement BIM, you cannot work in the all organization at the same time. You have to prioritize. And in order to prioritize, you need to study which is the added value of each one of your processes, because it will be much more profitable for the organization to begin with the implementation of BIM in these areas that are the areas that produce more added value for the business. Then this is one of the most important studies that we run with the organizations, and also it's one of the difficult parts of this method, because many people think that they are losing their time when they are thinking about the definition of all these system, because they are running their business and they haven't need this before. And we have to face this challenge with a lot, spending a lot of time to try to convince them that it's basic, and in some cases that can make quite difficult to continue with the implementation process. But for us to define or to establish this scope, it's the most important thing on our support to the BIM implementation in any kind of organization, because when troubles arise, if you don't have a clear definition of what do you expect with the BIM implementation, the temptation of forget this new process, it's really high. Okay. Once here, you have to define the team that will be involved in this project of BIM implementation, and it depends on the scale of the organization, but usually we are providing consultancy service to public bodies and also to private companies. But in the case of public bodies, you have to study if the implementation will begin in a department or will be they want to study the BIM implementation in all the organization. We recommend to begin with a division or an area and establish a coordinate group of members of this area, and from the different levels of this area, because you need to answer all the questions that are related with the services that you provide or the product that you generate, of the services that you give to your clients, you know. Once here you have an idea about what we want to do, how we want to do, and as you know, BIM is related with information management. Then if we didn't have a clear definition of the processes, we recommend them to begin to establish these processes of information management, because they have to understand that BIM applies in this and in the activities that are developed to generate a delivery based on information. And this is that we try to do. Then we study, okay, I don't know why. We have to study the process and the activities that, based on existing information, they generate a new one. Until now, all these processes and activities were based on documents. And since the beginning of this century, with BIM and with the new technologies, we begin to work to change to data-based information deliverables. Then we have to study really well which are our inputs, what kind of information we use to make our activities, and also we have to study really, or to establish which are our deliverables and which kind of information these deliverables are based on. The idea, the idea is that we can achieve a list of different activities that they are related with information management, and we have to know exactly if these activities are developed in our company or it's developed for other people outside of our company. In the case that we develop this information, who is responsible of this one? Which is the necessary information in order to develop this activity? Which is the information that we generate as a result of this activity? And which kind of information? Can be an Excel, can be a Word, can be a database, can be a draw. What's the most? This is really important, because if we understand that we are managing information and we are producing products, information based products, we would face the challenge to automatize or to digitize this information. And this is the meaning for us of BIM, that you can transform the flows that you have now based on documents in data. Okay, and also this is another point that it takes some time, because a lot of the organizations, they don't have a clear structure of the activities that they do, and even more, less identify the activities that generate some information and which kind of information. They know really well the documents that they do, but they don't know exactly which kind of data needs to provide these documents, you know. The last thing, the last phase of the starting point is to identify the waste. And in this case, we use the typical waste classification that everybody knows, that it's different when we work on the manufacturing sector or in the service sector, okay? But the idea is that all the activities that we have identified that they produce an information deliverable need to be checked again different types of waste, because making this matrix we identify the activities that can be improved, that or that they need more improvements, or also we can identify the reasons of this of the that generates waste in the majority of the activities related with information management, and we can establish different projects in order to solve these problems, you know, and then we can use A3 forms in order to define the projects, the improvement projects that we have to introduce in our system, and that means to establish the basis of the BIM implementation, you know. Then we have to fix BIM goals, and I have been talking a little bit about this when I say you that with this matrix we can select which activities must be the first ones to face, because all of these activities are related with information management, and that will allow us to establish the goals. Then just some few I want to add some information about the BIM framework that I have explained to you. The phases, the stages that, as I told you before, are object-based modeling. That means that we make the way from document-based processes to model-based processes. That means a big change, and it's necessary to face the challenge inside the organization. And until we don't have passed or we don't have studied this transition, we cannot collaborate with other people. Once we have established some idea, some maturity, we have accomplished some maturity in object-based modeling, then we could face the model-based collaboration, because we could establish some norms. We could adapt the rules. We could define our policy in order to manage the collaboration with our with other stakeholders that are that we need to work with on the development of our projects or our services. You know, integration, I think it's some people is talking about integration, that they are making integration, but I think that the technology, it's not enough developed to work in a network-based integration form that or manner, because in some aspects of our work we can do, but not in the part of the design and construction management. I think that's my opinion. Okay, then the initial goal is to understand that we have to make the way from document-based to model-based. Okay, where to implement BIM? Well, we can first different phases of the project, but it depends on we are working on. But usually the first step is working this border. That means in this border and also in this border. That means to make some models at the end of the projects and make some as-built models at the end of the construction. But usually we are not using the models during the development of the project and also during for the construction management process, you know. In the second stage that we begin to collaborate between the we get the collaboration between the construction agents and design, construction and design. That means a design and build process. That we change from data exchange to data interchange. That means it's not just it's a word game, but it's really important. Here we give the information in a format that can be used. Here we work together in the same information. And finally, in the third stage, we will try to work together all the stakeholders of the asset that they are involved in an asset management. Okay. The initial goal is here. Also, again, it's to understand how we can improve the design using models, how we can improve the construction using models, and now, just now, I think that some people is working on how to improve the maintenance and operation. But in this case, I think that the technology of OM management is enough developed. Now we need to work on getting achieving the interoperability between the construction phase and the maintenance and operation. The stages also are must to understand that we have to work in three fields: in the technology field, in the process field, and in the policy field. And these are different indicators that we can use in order to define our journey to the first stage. You know, the different steps. We can begin with some software, then we can change some features of our hardware, and we can improve the network in order to achieve better communication between the team members. In terms of process, we have to change the leadership because we have to understand that we are working in data-based processes, not in documents. Then the definition of the human resources and also how we provide our products and our services have to make this change. Okay. At the end, the policy also have to change, and this is one of the challenges of the public bodies, that they need to understand that they have to change their employment information requirements, because until now we are working in a market that the providers, we want to change our processes in order to digitize our services and our products, but at the end the owners want to get documents and want to get traditional deliverables, and that introduce a lot of waste in our processes. Okay. in this case, as I told you, the initial goals must be focused on establishing the change of these 10 areas in order to achieve the goals related with the working based on objects, you know. In order to establish the value propositions of BIM, we have defined a matrix of the main benefits that we can achieve with the BIM implementation in front of the problems that we have detect during the starting point. Okay, that let us identify, and we make a workshop when we try to identify the activities that we need to improve and the related benefit that we can achieve, and also we have to identify the expected outcome. If we define we identify these opportunities of improvement, then we have to assess the impact on our organization in order to establish which must be the actions that we have to develop in the first steps. You know, if we achieve some low impact and low efforts, we have to try to implement in a not planned manner, because it's easier to implement and we can do it easily. But we have to try to prioritize all the actions that we can identify with high impact and low effort. That will help us to define the objectives. And we have defined a process that it's based on we have to write a brief description of the goal or of the objective, detail it, because with a brief description we translate an idea, but many times there is not a sharing understanding of this idea, and then we have to describe it in a detailed manner in order to make much more understandable for all the agents that will participate in the project development. Okay. Then to achieve this objective, we need to define the measures proposed to achieve the objective, and we tell them action, BIM actions. And in this case is, for example, this is right in Catalan because is the case that we have developed during the last years. That means that we have to visualize the solution in order to facilitate the project understanding, you know. And one of the actions that we have to do is draw much more coherence or analyze critical points of the project, or identify or localize elements in the building. That will let us visualize much more better the solution. But in any case, any organization need to define their own objectives. We have access to the public agency that manage all the investments in infrastructures here in Catalonia, and they have defined the project and the objectives in this way. But with this, we know what we want to do and what we have to do, but also we have to define what we want to achieve. And any of these proposed measures need to be related with a deliverable, because in any other case we cannot assess if we have achieved the objective that we have established for the project. Okay, then for us, when we face the challenge to define deliverables and the proposed measures to achieve the objectives, we think about conditions of satisfaction that we have to establish in order to get this object. Once we arrive here, the other thing is really easy, because BIM implementation began with big efforts of the developers, of the software developers, that sold us magic receipts that and magic softwares that will arrange to all of us our life, and we also could make the projects with any effort. The reality is really different, but we have to recognize that software tools and formats are at least much more developed than the definition of what we want to achieve with these software tools and with this format. In this case, as I showed you before, for each one of these actions, we define exactly what we want to achieve. This is a condition of satisfaction. We want to see views of the critical points, and we will use this model and we will do with this model, the federate model, and with this software and in this format. That allows us to define different levels of goals and objectives. Once we analyze all the objectives that we can introduce in our organization, we have to classify them in these different levels. We can classify them. Some of the goals are strategic, other are general objectives, other are operative objectives, other are tangible results, and other are specific actions. Why we have to classify? Because we have to define the information requirements in different BIM documents. The strategic goals must be defined in the guide that it's an organization level, the BIM guides. Okay, the general objectives, that means that affect projects or services or products, must be described in manuals. But when we face the objectives that are specific, project specific, we have to define procedures or phases of the project, but means in the design phase, or maybe in the construction phase, or maybe in the operation of maintenance phase. Okay, when we talk about specific or tangible results that we have to achieve in a specific project, we define these objectives in the BEP and BEP. Okay, and finally, we can also establish protocols that they are for specific actions. Okay, but it's interesting, I think, that we do this exercise in terms to try to classify the improvement opportunities in order to define our strategy or maybe just our specific actions, okay? The information requirements that we have to establish, they must be related with the ISO. I think I'm going so, I need to go faster. Then I think that now it's not so, it's so clear for everybody of you that I think that all of you know this framework, and this is focused on organization requirements. This is in asset requirements and in project requirement. But for us, the most important thing is that we have to establish a asset hierarchy that it's based on function, and it's domain specific. If we work in rails, we have a specific subdivision by functions. If we work in water management, we have another one. But in the other hand, we have BIM object classification. In UK, you use Uniclass, and here in Spain, we use another topic, internal one that it's Gubinclass, that it's much more adapt to our mindset, okay? But the main goal of this classification is the subdivision by their representation, and we define objects and parts of objects, but we have to establish, in order to achieve the interoperability between asset management and BIM models, we need to establish the relationship between the different levels of these two classifications, and that give us the challenge to define the different sets of properties that we have to inform in any one of the objects of the model. And we, at the beginning, in order to be lean and don't produce waste, we just try to establish few requirements about basic attributes that they are: identification, geometry, location, and performance. And we have generate a standard sheet that identifies, here you can see, but that's the property and the sets of properties. And you see identification, geometry, location, and performance, okay? But we just ask for this information in order to make people understand that with just these few attributes, we can make all the model uses related with 3D representation, visualization, quantification, operation analysis, construction analysis, 4D. All of this, it can be done with just these few parameters or properties, Also, that makes introduce some changes in the profiles, but we are trying to make understand to the organizations that this is just roles. They are not profiles. Profiles are these ones that we have in our organizations, but these profiles have to introduce or have to be responsible of new activities that in some cases change, but the processes and workflows are defined by the project manager, and also the other team members has other responsibilities. We have to try to introduce new flows of information and we have to, due to the change of these flows of information, define the new responsibilities of the current profiles. For the reason, we think that we don't have to create new profiles. We have to give capabilities to our current profiles in order to do the things in another manner. Okay. Technological infrastructure, it's not so important. If we have defined really well the objectives and we have defined really well our information requirements, we will find any kind of technology, because technology every time it's increasing the productivity, their productivity, and also they give to the market much faster than 5 years ago any kind of solution that you can imagine. Okay. One of the things important is that all this information must be managed and centralized, and the common data environment is established to manage to achieve this management. But not just the part of the information, we also need to establish a communication system at 3 levels: a model, all the conversation related with, or all communications related with the management of the model, all the communication related with the deliverables, and also all the communications due to the requirements, the information requirements. Okay. Finally, just the technological infrastructure. We are introducing BIM in an existing framework of different systems that a lot of organization has, and we have to guarantee the integration of these different technologies of information management. And if we establish accurate information or an asset hierarchy and an object classification, we will make much more easy all these integrations, you know, because we have to understand that when we introduce the BIM implementation means that when we introduce some data through models, we have to know who will receive this information and how they will manage this information in order to analyze if it's possible to give this information in the format that they need. Okay. In some cases it's easy, and in other cases it's really hard, and it's almost impossible to do. Okay. And we need to establish some interfaces, technical interfaces that we can use, for example, Excel or some Excel file or other things like this. Okay. As a conclusion, when we define the action plan, we have to set the target, we have to build the team, we have to establish the roadmap, setting the deadlines, and providing resources. The action plan, in order to establish the roadmap, we need to do these steps that I have explained to you, and all these steps needs an asset assessment system in order to identify if we are working in the right direction or if we are achieving the goals that we established. But also they need to be complemented by a training plan. As I told you at the beginning, BIM, it's a people-centered management system. And if we don't provide training to our people, we will not achieve the mindset change, and we will not achieve also the any one of the objectives that we could establish for the BIM implementation process. Finally, we need a schedule, and in this case, we define an action plan that it's based in an awareness of what BIMs mean, and then we establish some previous actions. That the first one is that establish the information requirements. If we get this awareness of our people and we establish this information requirement, then we can run some pilots in the areas that they produce more added value to our business. That takes at least 1 year to get the first conclusions about the improvement that we can achieve with the BIM implementation. Okay. And the conclusion is that we have established this method after 4 years working with the Generalitat de Catalunya, where we established the BIM guide, the BIM manual, the BIM classification, and also the objects standard. Okay. And my last thought is, I read this sentence, I found this in internet, and Aspen Health Consulting, but I like it so much that because it's really a summary of all of my ideas. That means that if the great value of BDC BIM methodology is only achieved when it is included as part of a cultural mindset that permeates through all aspects of a company or project team. Anything less wastes money, energy, quality, and opportunity. And this is the message that I want to translate to you when you face the BIM implementation. You need to understand where is your value, how you produce your value, and then once you have identified this, then you can understand and you can work on the BIM journey, to define the BIM journey. Okay. Thank you for your attention, and I'm just in time, but a little bit late. But just one thing at the end, if you have interest or you're interested on this BIM approach, this weekend that will be the first excellent seminar where it's for free, that you can attend it, and you will understand and you will see all the things that we are doing in this with this initiative.
Thanks, Victor. I'd like to thank Victor for a very insightful and detailed presentation. We are slightly over, so any questions that have come in, I'll send them on to Victor and he can come back to you directly. A copy of this webinar will be sent out to everyone who attended. We will send out the information shortly via LinkedIn, Twitter, and newsletter for the next webinar, which is taking place on the 26th of August. The topic of which is facilities in higher education, challenges and opportunities. It will be presented by Amar Abdulazim, Chairperson of Lean in Public Sector. Thank you again from Victor and myself on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland. You can follow Lean Construction Ireland on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and through the website leanconstructionireland.ie. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thanks, Victor.
Thank you.